So this is my first time posting on Reddit, so go easy on me. I'm 26, female, and I recently moved into my own apartment. Needed to be closer to work because the commute from my parents' place was killer. Saved up enough from my last job to finally afford a small place, and my parents helped out a bit too. Been living here for almost 3 months now, all by myself. Bliss. But 6 days ago, my mom called with a favor to ask. Turns out, my cousin, Alex, 23, male, is supposed to start working soon, and his job happens to be near mine. My mom, in her infinite wisdom, told my aunt, her sister, that Alex could crash with me and save on rent. My mom has this tendency to go above and beyond for her family, and it's usually my dad and I who get caught in the crossfire. I was pissed that she'd offered me up as a free hotel without even asking me first. And to make it worse, she told my aunt that Alex wouldn't have to pay rent. I told her he had to pay rent or find somewhere else, but she'd already committed, so she said she'd cover it. Ridiculous, right? But she insisted, so I couldn't really argue. Then she pulled the emotional manipulation card, saying they'd helped me with the apartment and moving costs, so this was the least I could do. Looking back, it was totally manipulative, but I'll get to that later. Alex and I were born a few years apart. We were close in middle school, but he turned into a bit of a jerk in high school. Arrogant, self-centered, hung out with a bad crowd, so I distanced myself. We were civil at family gatherings, but never more than that. I didn't know how he was now, but I hoped he'd changed. Boy, was I wrong. My hopes were dashed on day one. He was home that day, and it turns out he's a total slob. He trashed my place within hours. I was so annoyed that I made him clean it up the second I walked in. He did, but he seemed just as annoyed with me as I was with him. Honestly, couldn't wait for him to start working so he'd be out of the house. The first 2 days were rough. His presence was just loud and obnoxious. He hadn't changed a bit. Still a brat. All he did was play video games, yell into his phone at his friends, and order takeout. I only put up with him because of my mom's guilt trip and because she was paying his way. Plus, at least he'd learned his lesson about the mess and started cleaning up after himself. Before you guys jump on me, let me just say that my mom can be incredibly forceful. I tried to avoid this whole situation, but I couldn't. Finally, on the 3rd day, Alex started work. We got home around the same time, and the house was actually clean. He ordered takeout again, I cooked myself dinner, and we went to sleep. It was the first decent day, with minimal interaction. I was starting to think maybe this arrangement wouldn't be so bad. Yeah, that didn't last long. The very next day, I got home a little later than usual because of traffic. Walked into my apartment and found it had been taken over by a bunch of random dudes in suits. There were like 6 or 7 of them, ties loosened, top buttons undone, looking all casual while they polished off a bottle of really expensive wine I'd been saving for a special occasion. I was already pissed seeing them laughing and talking around my coffee table with their feet up on it, something I absolutely hate. But it got worse. Alex spotted me and casually told me he'd invited his coworkers over for drinks. Then he told me to get the other bottle of wine from the cabinet for them. One of his coworkers even had the nerve to tell me I should have stocked beer instead, which earned him a round of laughs. Not from me, though. I was fuming, trying to keep my cool, but I snapped when Alex told me again to get the wine, even pointing towards the cabinet. "You have arms and legs, get it yourself," I snapped at him. "And since you don't pay rent to live here, I'd appreciate it if you asked before inviting people over." That shut them up. Felt pretty good, actually. I stormed off to my room, slammed the door, and immediately called my mom. Told her I couldn't live with this guy anymore. The slob thing I could handle, but this was disrespectful, and I wasn't okay with it, even if she was covering his rent. Of course, Mom got all emotional. Said she couldn't just let me kick him out, that it would ruin her relationship with my aunt. More manipulation. She said I'd done enough by snapping at him in front of his friends, so basically guilt-tripped me into letting him stay. She promised that I'd only have to put up with him until the end of the month, after he got his first paycheck. Said she'd talk to my aunt and make sure he moved out then. I didn't like the idea of another month with him, but Mom was so insistent that I ended up agreeing. Alex and I didn't speak after that incident. Barely saw him, actually. He'd shut himself in his room the second he got home from work. This went on for 2 days, and then today, I got a call from my aunt. I'm guessing neither Alex nor my mom told my aunt about the wine incident, because she didn't mention it. Instead, she had another outrageous demand. She wanted me to cook for her son, do his dishes and his laundry. Apparently, he'd told her I only cooked for myself and did my own chores without asking if he needed help. This had been bugging her because she didn't think her precious son was capable of taking care of himself. She actually said to me, "You're older than him, so you should be looking out for him. That includes doing things he's not used to." I was speechless. She expected me, a working woman, to babysit her adult son like he was a toddler. Seriously, even a 13-year-old knows how to do basic chores. It was insane that she expected me to do this for him. So, I snapped at her too. Told her she didn't expect me to look out for him, but to be his mother, which I wasn't. She could either take him back and give him the royal treatment, or she could deal with it and let her son learn, just like I had. As expected, she didn't take that well. Launched into a lecture about being a good sister, how I should be protective of my youngest sibling, just like my mom is, instead of being arrogant and acting like an activist. She actually said her son was a really sweet boy and deserved to be looked after. I decided to burst her bubble, told her about the wine incident, how he'd been disrespectful by inviting his friends over without asking, opening my expensive wine, and then demanding I fetch another bottle like I was his personal maid. I thought this might knock some sense into her, make her realize her son wasn't perfect. Nope. Instead of acknowledging that he'd been rude, she demanded that I issue a public apology for insulting him in front of his friends. She said I should have just sucked it up and gotten the bottle to avoid drama, and could have talked to him about it later in private. But no, I chose to humiliate him instead. She wanted me to apologize publicly and make sure his friends saw it, since they'd witnessed me disrespecting her darling son. I told her I'd do no such thing. "You can take your son and leave me the heck alone," I said. I reminded her that since my mom was paying his rent, he better show me some respect. Then I hung up and muted her. I wasn't interested in dragging that conversation on any longer. I was already mentally preparing to call my mom and tell her I wanted Alex out. But before I could, she called me. Mom was screaming at me. Apparently, I'd ruined her relationship with her sister. I didn't understand what she was talking about at first, but then she explained. My comment about her paying Alex's rent meant that I'd never actually agreed to let him live with me voluntarily, that I wasn't treating them like family. This had led to a massive fight between my mom and aunt, and somehow, this was all my fault. I should have known better than to tell my entitled aunt the truth. I argued back. It wasn't my fault she'd forced me to take my cousin in as a roommate when I clearly didn't want to. She was the one who manipulated me, and now she was mad that I told the truth. Even after I explained what my aunt had said to me, Mom wasn't ready to hear it. Insisted that I'd been selfish and hadn't thought about how this would affect her relationship with her sister. I tried to explain my side, but we were just talking in circles. There was no point in trying to get her to understand. So I hung up mid-rant. I've always loved my mom, but she's way too easily swayed when it comes to her family. And I'm 26, not a child anymore. I can't keep dealing with this, especially not when it comes to Alex and my aunt, who are both equally insufferable. I do feel a little bad about rubbing it in their faces that Alex was living rent-free, since my mom was covering it. That wasn't entirely fair, but she wanted it to be a secret. That's the part I regret. Anyway, it's been almost 3 days since I posted here, and Alex left that very day, after my phone call with my aunt. He didn't even talk to me, just packed his stuff and left without a word. I'm sure he left because my aunt told him to, and I'm glad they had that conversation. I don't care what their reasons are, I'm just happy he's gone. Don't need a grown, entitled man-child and his equally entitled mother bugging me. I've also spoken to my mom about it. She wanted me to post that public apology, and apologize to my aunt as well, for the sake of their relationship. I told her to forget it, I wasn't going to apologize for something I shouldn't even have to be sorry about. She was willing to force me to apologize, but she wouldn't stand up for me. I know what her priorities are, and I'm not interested in fixing any relationships anymore. Everyone can go to hell for all I care. This drama is exhausting. So, I told Mom not to contact me unless she changed her mind. We haven't spoken in 2 days. Probably won't for a while, unless she miraculously apologizes to me. I'm in touch with my dad, though. He's trying to get me to talk to Mom, but I'm not budging. Not this time. I did the right thing and everyone knows it, so I don't see why I have to apologize to anybody. It's been a week now, and I haven't spoken to Mom. But Dad keeps checking in every day. This morning he called before I left for work and asked me to come home early. Mom wanted to meet, so I did. My parents arrived around the same time I got back, and I expected Mom to at least greet me, be nice. But she completely ignored me, refused to even look at me, like I wasn't there. That really rubbed me the wrong way. She was the one who requested this meeting. Dad looked awkward and embarrassed, so I guess he didn't see this coming either. But with Mom, it's rarely predictable. Even after they were sitting on my couch, she refused to speak to me directly. Tried to whisper to Dad so he could relay the message. That's where I drew the line. "Talk to me directly if you have something to say," I yelled. We had another argument about the same things, my behavior, how I'd become arrogant and selfish after getting a good job and moving out. Then she told me, for the last and final time, to apologize to my aunt and cousin, or she'd make sure I was ostracized from the family forever. I can't even tell you how much that pissed me off. I told her to get out of my house. She brought up how she'd helped pay for things, that this wasn't entirely mine. I was about to tell her I'd pay her back if that's what she wanted, but she had to leave right now. That's when Dad finally spoke up. He told Mom she couldn't keep using that against me, because it was his money that went into it, not hers. So all along, Mom had been leading me to believe she'd contributed, but she hadn't. Just wanted to manipulate me. I'm disappointed, but honestly, not surprised. My parents argued for a bit after Dad defended me. After about 15 minutes, they left. Dad apologized for wasting my time. He was pretty pissed off by then, and so was I. The meeting definitely didn't end well. It's been several hours since they left. It's past midnight now, but I haven't heard from Dad. I'm waiting for him to call and update me on what's going on with him and Mom. I don't know what's going to happen now. Dad rarely ever speaks up against Mom, and this is one of the few times he's interfered in one of our arguments. So there's no telling what Mom might do. I just hope this doesn't blow up our family. It's already so annoying that my aunt is causing all these problems. 4 days since the last update, and my parents finally spoke yesterday. They didn't talk to each other for 3 whole days, but then Mom finally broke down and talked to Dad. She's apologized to him, but he says she still needs time to come around and apologize to me as well. Apparently, Mom has a huge ego, and for the first time, she knows she's messed up. It's fine, though. She can take her time. Right now, I'm just trying to focus on work. I've taken on a new project, and it's keeping me busy. Surprisingly enough, Alex texted me last night and apologized for the way he behaved while he was living with me. Said it was totally unacceptable. He can't get his mother to see that she's wrong, but I hardly care about my aunt. She's worse than my mom when it comes to admitting fault. And after our last interaction and all the drama, I don't even want to talk to her. So, I don't care if she doesn't apologize to me either. I did forgive Alex, though. So it's all good for now. It's been a few weeks since the last update, and things have calmed down a lot. Mom finally apologized. It wasn't exactly heartfelt, but it was an apology nonetheless. We're slowly rebuilding our relationship, but I'm still keeping my distance. I need to see real change before I can fully trust her again. Dad's been great throughout all of this. He's been supportive and understanding, and he's even helped me set some boundaries with Mom. I'm really grateful for him. As for Alex and my aunt, haven't heard from them. Good riddance, I say. This whole experience has really made me think about family dynamics. I used to think that family was everything, that you had to put up with anything for the sake of keeping the peace. But now I realize that healthy relationships, even with family, require mutual respect and boundaries. I'm not going to let anyone walk all over me anymore, not even my own mother. I deserve to be treated with kindness and consideration, and I'm not afraid to stand up for myself. I'm also learning to prioritize my own needs. For a long time, I put everyone else's needs before my own. But now I realize that it's okay to put myself first sometimes. It's not selfish, it's self-care. This whole ordeal has been a roller coaster of emotions. There's been anger, hurt, frustration, and even sadness. But there's also been a sense of empowerment, of finding my voice, and of taking control of my own life. I'm not sure what the future holds, but I'm facing it with a newfound sense of confidence and self-worth. I know that I can handle whatever comes my way, because I've already overcome so much. And if there's one thing I've learned from all of this, it's that I'm stronger than I thought. Story 3. I'm 27 years old, and I've been my family's black sheep for as long as I can remember, growing up in a 5-person family. From a young age, it was obvious where I stood. It was hard to overlook the manner in which my parents prioritized my younger brother, 25, and elder sister, 30. I was the independent one, the responsible one, which, as I came to understand later, was simply a tactful way of stating that I was the one they didn't want to help. I was often reminded as a youngster that I wasn't as important. For even the simplest achievements, my sister received accolades. My parents threw her a lavish celebration when I graduated with honors, even though she barely completed a college course. My parents dismissed it as if it were insignificant. They failed to attend the event at all. But there was more than simply the festivities. It was all of it. My brother was sensitive, my sister was weak, and I was supposed to do everything by myself. One of the most difficult aspects was the disparity in income. To acquire an automobile, my sister received assistance. Both of them took family-funded vacations, and my brother's tuition was covered. I was informed that I needed to develop my independence in the interim. After a procedure that I couldn't afford, I requested assistance with medical expenditures. They informed me they had emergency funds. My sister's second wedding, which they fully paid for, ended up being that emergency. For me, that was the tipping moment. I never imagined that I would attempt therapy. By my mid-20s, however, I was in dire need of clarification. Why did I feel that I needed to prove myself to my parents? What made them act as though I didn't belong? My eyes were awakened to several things in therapy that I had been reluctant to acknowledge. In addition to being unjust, my parents' partiality was also deceptive. They kept me tense and constantly wanting to prove myself by using it to manipulate me. I began to establish limits for the first time, and believe me, it did not sit well with them. A family gathering a few years ago served as the true impetus for the transformation. I heard my siblings making fun of me when I was seated in the kitchen. My career and my depressing little abode, as they termed it, were the subjects of their laughter. The worst thing? They were laughing, and so were my parents. Why that astonished me is beyond me. Hearing it like way in public upset me, even though it wasn't the first time they had made me feel inferior. I went straight up to them. I informed them that I had had enough of being ignored. I'm sick of them ignoring my emotions all the time. They regarded me as though I were speaking a foreign language. I was described as theatrical by my father. My mother advised me to quit being so unappreciative. For me, it was it. I was aware that I couldn't continue to live in this manner, constantly expecting that people would start treating me differently. Breaking bonds wasn't simple. My parents pretended to be surprised that I would genuinely defend myself. I was termed selfish by my siblings, but for the first time, I didn't mind. I stopped returning their calls and attending family gatherings. I put all of my energy into myself instead. I began to concentrate on my work, determining my true goals in life, and spending more time with friends. It was around this period that I began to construct my own family. I surrounded myself with people who truly cared about me, who helped me through difficult times and rejoiced in my victories. They threw me a surprise party after I received a promotion at work, a significant one that I had been aiming for years. I had never felt so genuinely honored in my life. Not even my original family acknowledged it. That just validated my pre-existing knowledge. I had been correct to do it. My birthday last year was one of the most memorable days. Unlike my family, my friends surprised me with a cake and decorations. It had nothing to do with the celebration or the presents. It was about being appreciated and seen. I came to the realization that I no longer required their approval. I could create a life in which I came first. I made the decision to post my tale online a few weeks later. For a long time, I felt that I was the only one who felt this way, and that my need for more was a weakness. However, I had benefited much from reading other people's tales, and I wanted to help someone else in the same way. The reaction was tremendous. People gave me advice, talked about their own experiences, and reaffirmed that it's acceptable to leave unhealthy relationships, even if they include family. I won't pretend that everything is ideal right now, but I feel like I'm in charge of my life for the first time. Although it was the most difficult thing I have ever done, severing my family's ties was also the finest choice I have ever made. At last, I can be myself without being constrained by their expectations. Update 1. I was blown away by the response I received after sharing my experience on Reddit. I had anticipated a few sweet words and comments, but the post really took off. As they shared their own stories of toxic families, people showered the comments with support, letting me know I wasn't alone. Some people complimented me for expressing what they had been feeling for years. Others gave me advice or just confirmed my experiences. I felt a fire ignite for the first time as I read their support. I genuinely believed that my decision to leave my family was not insane. I received a job offer shortly after an amazing event that fundamentally altered my life. It was for a job that I applied for months ago, but I didn't believe I would receive because of how hard the competition was. I nearly didn't believe the offer when I first saw it. It was twice as much as I was earning. The position was precisely what I had been dreaming of, and the bonuses were wonderful. It was like starting a fresh chapter when I accepted it. In some way, word of my new work reached my parents. I don't know if it was through a common acquaintance or a distant cousin, but my mother texted me one day. "Congratulations on your new position. You have our admiration." It's brief, dry, and roughly as warm as a concrete slab. My sister contacted me a few hours later as well, but her message was more about making fun of me than it was about congratulating me. She joked that I must believe I'm better than everyone now and added, "I hope you don't forget where you came from." In a similar vein, my brother said that I should maintain my humility and accused me of being ostentatious. I experienced a little twinge of remorse. I questioned whether I had miscalculated them and whether severing relations had been too severe. However, I brought it up in my subsequent therapy appointment, and my therapist reminded me of all the factors that had led to this choice. Protecting myself was more important than punishing them. I was able to stay focused on the important things thanks to that reminder, constructing the life I was due. My new job's financial independence gave me opportunities I had never had before. I established a savings account, paid off my college loans, and took my first single trip. I had always wanted to take a solo trip, but I was never able to finance it. It was all I imagined it would be. A week spent discovering a new place and doing precisely what I wanted. After years of striving to impress other people, it was like regaining a part of who I was. Naturally, the peace was short-lived. Suddenly, my sister began contacting me to tell me how much she missed me. I initially believed that she may be honest, but the demands quickly began. "Would you be able to assist me with this month's rent?" As if there had never been any problems, she asked nonchalantly. I informed her that I couldn't. The tone changed. Abruptly, I was self-centered and neglected my responsibilities to my family. She pulled my parents into it as well, saying I had to take over since they were having problems. My brother then joined the trend. His texts were full of passive-aggressive jabs, suggesting that I believed I was suddenly too good for the family. I didn't allow them to drag me back into their drama, even though it was draining. Rather, I turned to the online community that had been so encouraging, my friends, my co-workers, and my chosen family. I was reminded that I knew nothing about my biological family. I began sharing more of my life on social media at this time. I wasn't attempting to brag. All I wanted to do was record my journey. Photos from my trip, workplace milestones, Small moments of happiness spent with pals. I was shocked when others began to follow along, because they were interested in the progress and happiness I was providing. However, it seems that my parents were also monitoring. My mother called me one day and accused me of making fun of my accomplishments. When my siblings were having difficulties, she stated it was unfair to publish things like that. I discovered then that they had been following my posts. I blocked them right away. After that, I publicly discussed the value of boundaries and the reasons I chose to cut ties with toxic family members. I knew they would hear about it, even if it wasn't directed at them specifically. There was a mixed response. While some members of my extended family criticized me for leaving my parents, others reached out to express their understanding and support. I gave them the freedom to express themselves. Their views were no longer relevant. One breakthrough occurred during a specific session of emotional treatment. My therapist encouraged me to consider all the times I made an effort to be the ideal daughter and the consequences. I finally allowed myself to forgive the version of myself that had spent so much time vying for their acceptance. It was like letting go of a burden I was unaware I was carrying at that very time. When it was all over, something changed. Without my family, I wasn't just getting by. I was flourishing. For the first time, I wasn't worried what people thought of me by peering over my shoulder. I no longer sought their approval. I had freedom. Update 2. I believed the craziness with my family had finally subsided after weeks of calm. Peering through the crowds, I heard an unexpected tap on my apartment door one evening while I was relaxing after work. To my surprise, my mother was standing there with tears running down her cheeks. Curious yet reluctant, I opened the door. She hurried in right away and begged me to return to the family. She started telling about how much I was missed by everyone, but the topic soon changed. She began enumerating all the ways that my distance from them had harmed them. I was reminded of all the purported sacrifices they had made for me, and it was like a torrent of guilt tripping with her. She said I was selfish and ungrateful, reversing the entire circumstance as though I had done them harm. I inhaled deeply while maintaining my composure. I reminded her of the years of unfair treatment and neglect, and stated that I had not taken the choice to step back lightly. I informed her that I had to put my health first. She attempted to interrupt, but I refused to argue and held my ground. She eventually realized I wouldn't give in and stormed off, still muttering about how I was ruining the family. A common buddy contacted us a few days later with some unexpected information. My sister had apparently been boasting to others that I was providing for her. By pretending that we were close and that I was helping her, she was employing this falsehood to keep up appearances. We hadn't spoken for months, so it was confusing. Things swiftly got out of hand when our friend challenged her about the lying. As word got out, individuals in our social circles started to doubt her moral character. There was a lot of drama as the facade she had painstakingly constructed began to fall apart. I decided not to get involved because I wanted the truth to come to light on its own. In the meantime, I was experiencing good things in my life. I was given a major award at work for spearheading a project that was successful. My coworkers were truly delighted for me, and it was a noteworthy accolade. A party was planned by my friends and the family I had selected. We got together and laughed and enjoyed one other's company at my favorite restaurant. My family was still trying to entice me back, even though it was a sharp contrast to the ugliness I had left behind. My parents sent me an email with the subject line, "Family Matters." They threatened to cut me off from their will unless I fixed the family. They cautioned that I was making a big mistake and accused me of being the cause of all the strife. It seems like yet another attempt at manipulation with the ultimatum. I performed some covert checking since I was curious about their danger. My parents had been lying about their money for years, it turned out. Not much was left to inherit. Instead of assets, they had accrued debt. It was simply another delusion, their imagined wealth. When I realized this, their ultimatum was no longer effective against me. Some of my extended family started contacting me at this time. A couple relatives surprised me by sharing their own accounts of being neglected and given preference in the family. They sympathized with my predicament and extended assistance. Knowing that I wasn't alone was reassuring, and we began developing closer relationships apart from the poisonous relationships we had experienced as children. Online, my narrative started to acquire popularity. People might relate to my experience of taking charge of my life and establishing limits. Strangers began to message me to thank me for sharing and to say that it had motivated them to improve their own lives for the better. Seeing something positive emerge unexpectedly from my experiences was encouraging. I began receiving presents and apologetic texts from my siblings. They expressed a desire to go on and repair our connections in their writing. However, I couldn't help but be dubious of their abrupt change of heart in light of all that had transpired. I questioned whether they had hidden agendas since it looked too convenient. Positively, I got to know someone significant during a volunteer event. Our common principles and interests brought us together. He recognized the value of boundaries and respected my freedom. Our connection grew into something significant as we spent more time together. Being with someone who valued my path and encouraged my decisions was a welcome change. News of my father's health crisis then surfaced. During this trying period, my family reached out to me to express how much they needed me. They implied that I was responsible for taking on caregiving responsibilities. I was worried about his health at the time. I was aware that returning to that setting was unhealthy for me. In response, I advised that they seek expert assistance, emphasizing that this would guarantee he received the right treatment. For me, this choice was a pivotal moment. I came to see that I could be concerned about their welfare without compromising my own mental health. One of the most important steps in my recovery was learning to say no without feeling bad. Life went on. I concentrated on fostering my relationships, doing well at work, and making time for enjoyable pastimes. Their attempts to drag me back had less of an impact on me, the more I shaped my life to reflect who I really was. I discovered that the weight I had been carrying had decreased one day when I glanced back. I was free of the nagging sense of duty and guilt. I was surrounded by individuals who truly cared about me and was enjoying life on my terms. Though slight, the emotional breakthrough was significant. I became aware that I no longer felt bad about the choices I had made. I had made the decision to choose myself, which had led to true contentment and pleasure. Although the past persisted, it no longer shaped my present or future. I had freedom. Update 3. There hasn't been any activity for a time. It's almost too quiet. I was loving my life, succeeding both personally and professionally, and thriving in my new job at work. Peace seldom lasted long, though, as I discovered with my family. An unexpected communication from my HR department was the first step. My spine tingled just reading the subject line. I opened it in response to urgent accusations of misbehavior. Bewildered and uncomfortable, I was told by HR that they had received several anonymous complaints accusing me of acting unethically, anything from manipulating statistics to acting inappropriately among coworkers. Stunned, I gazed at the email. It was all illogical. HR was contacted right away to arrange a meeting. I also couldn't get rid of the sense that someone was attempting to destroy me, even though I knew I had done nothing wrong. My boss and HR discussed the specifics of the concerns at the meeting. I calmly responded to each charge, assured of my impeccable record. Every project log, communication, and even timestamp had a receipt for me. HR quickly realized that the accusations were unfounded. Even though I had entirely cleaned my name, things weren't over yet. I was astonished by what they found when they tracked the anonymous emails. An IP address connected to my brother's location had been the source of the complaints. At work, my own brother had attempted to undermine me. I was furious. It had been months since I had last spoken to him. He was prepared to go this far. I made the decision to face them. I laid out the information in a group message that I forwarded to my parents and siblings. Although I didn't directly blame them, I did make it apparent that I was aware of the source of the complaints. Rather than accept accountability, they reversed the situation. My brother called me insane and disputed everything. My sister added that I was attempting to use falsehoods to destroy the family. I was accused by my parents of having an obsession with hurting them. That was the last straw. I banned all of them on social media, email, and my phone. I refused to allow them to continue entangling me in their mayhem. To be sure they couldn't get in touch with me, I even changed my phone number. My sister arrived at my place of employment a week later. She was trying to charm the receptionist into admitting her in when I caught a glimpse of her through the glass entryway. Security pulled her out of the building after I informed them. I knew she wasn't finished yet, but she didn't struggle. I spoke with a lawyer about my alternatives the same day. If they persisted in bothering me, I had everything I needed to submit a restraining order. My maximum had been reached. I posted about what was going on Reddit, and I got an incredible amount of support. I had reassurance that I was acting morally, gave me legal protection tips, and even related comparable experiences of family members going too far. I was able to stay positive since I knew I wasn't alone. Life continued on despite the turmoil. I was given another significant promotion, this time to a senior position, only a month after the probe. My career took a significant turn, and the higher-ups acknowledged it. That evening, I rejoiced with my chosen family. We raised a glass to prosperity, development, and liberty. Naturally, my extended family found out about my promotion. All of a sudden, there were reports that I had abandoned my parents in their elderly state. Passive-aggressive communications from distant relatives questioned me about why I wasn't supporting my impoverished parents, who had done so much for me. I avoided interacting with them. I decided to let them speak. I choose to write instead. Without giving names, I wrote an anonymous piece about toxic families that told my story. It was frank and unvarnished, detailing the difficulties in establishing limits and the shame associated with letting go. Since it touched a nerve, the piece went viral almost immediately. It struck a profound chord with many. I was commended by several for my strength. Others talked about their own difficulties. I was pleased that my tale may benefit others, and it generated a significant conversation. The next desperate attempt came at that point. This time, there was a letter from my parents, handwritten. There was so much passion in the letter. They pleaded with me to return before it's too late, saying they were too elderly to fight. It was deceptive, with well-chosen phrases meant to evoke strong emotions in me. It didn't fool me. I replied by reiterating my boundaries in a brief but courteous letter. I said that while I wished them well, I will not be interacting with them anymore. Karma eventually caught up to my siblings about this time. For fraud, my brother was taken into custody. Nothing had anything to do with me. The golden child was suddenly less golden once the story immediately circulated. In the meantime, my sister began to blame me for her financial difficulties. I had left her when she needed me. She told anybody who would listen. I didn't overlook it. She received a cease and desist letter from my lawyer, cautioning her to stop making untrue statements. That soon silenced her. Finally, after all this, the sounds ceased. The manipulation, the falsehoods, the harassment, all of it stopped. This time, I wasn't letting go of the power I had regained over my life. I had a flourishing career. For the first time in years, I was at peace, and my friendships were stronger than before. I understood that I had created something they couldn't touch, know of how hard they tried to take me back. A life that was all mine. The fourth update is that, once my family's situation eventually calmed down, I was able to enjoy the independence and tranquility I had previously only imagined. I wanted to give back with this new phase of my life. I began working with survivors of abuse and abusive relationships at a nearby women's shelter. I was motivated by their tenacity, and it was satisfying to help something greater than myself. I also started contributing a percentage of my earnings to causes that were important to me, such as mental health and education efforts. This new life I was creating at work became based on giving back. I was able to mentor younger women entering the field because of my leadership status. I took this seriously and took the time to talk about my experiences with realizing and establishing limits in many facets of life, not only with regard to professional development. Some of them reminded me of myself. They were eager to show themselves, often at the price of their own health. It seemed like a win for me to see them flourish. My chosen family, meanwhile, was expanding. I made the decision to throw my first Friendsgiving that Thanksgiving. We managed to get by in my tiny flat. Everybody contributed a food, and we laughed, told tales, and thanked one another throughout the evening. I realized I had made this at one time while scanning the room. I picked this family, and they chose me back. This was my family now. But the drama for my biological family resurfaced just as I was getting used to this new feeling of identity. I learned that my parents had sold their home through rumors. Finally, years of poor money management had caught up with them. My siblings were incensed. They were suddenly rushing to find a place to live, not because they were interested in the home itself. They determined I should assist, of course. My sister sent me the first message, asking if I could give her a loan so she could move. She escalated when I didn't answer. She accused me of leaving the family at their time of need and called me callous in a public Facebook post. Judgmental remarks were made by her friends and some distant relatives. After I showed my lawyer the post, he promptly wrote her a legal cease and desist notice, which swiftly put an end to it. I dealt with the residual shame this evoked in therapy. I needed to hear my therapist reiterate what I had already come to realize. My family's shortcomings, financial difficulties, and bad decisions were not my fault. I didn't have to bear any of it. It seemed as if years of self-doubt and misdirected responsibility had come to an end. At this moment, a fantastic event occurred. My partner, who had always offered encouragement and support, made the proposal. It was just the two of us in a private time full of love and assurance. It wasn't a big, extravagant gesture. "Yes," I replied. With just our closest friends, we started organizing a modest, private wedding. Naturally, my family soon learned about the engagement, and there was immediate indignation. In a series of irate messages, my sister accused me of leaving them out and referred to the wedding as a slap in the face to the folks who brought you up. I didn't answer. In order to prevent more drama, I wouldn't allow them to make my wedding into another spectacle, because it wasn't about them. My public social media profiles were discreetly removed. Their probing eyes were no longer necessary in my existence. I concentrated on being present in my offline world and maintained a private page for my closest pals. It turned out to be one of my better choices. My career kept growing. I received an invitation to speak at a conference on how to overcome obstacles at work. I stood there and told the audience about my trip, not only the achievements in my career, but also the personal development that molded me into the person I am today. Attendees then approached me to express their gratitude for my candor and how my tale related to their own hardships. It was immensely satisfying to know that I had had an influence. My family, however, wasn't finished yet. My mother sent me an email one morning when I got up. Our final desire was read in the subject line. She said in the email that she and my father were near death and pleaded with me to make amends before it was too late. I had just received word from a relative that they were doing well, so the timing seemed fishy. I had worked so hard to set boundaries, and this was just another effort at manipulation to shame me into stepping over them. At my subsequent therapy appointment, I brought the email. After talking about it with my therapist, I decided I wouldn't reply. I would just be drawn back into their cycle of guilt and control if I engaged. I felt like I was getting better after realizing the manipulation for what it was. A few weeks later, my tale was anonymously posted in an industry blog by a former coworker. It was an amazing response. People who identified with my experience sent me messages congratulating me on my fortitude and tenacity. It made me realize how much I had to be proud of and how far I had come. I took a major stride at last. I purchased my first house. It was more than a home. It represented ending the generational cycles that had long characterized my family. As we celebrated in my new kitchen with my chosen family, I was overcome with a sense of calm. I had battled for this life, and it was mine. Update 5. I've been living in my new house for a year now. I also find it hard to realize how much my life has changed in the past. I have laughed a lot, grown, and reached milestones in my first year here that I never would have imagined. My friends and loved ones who have supported me threw a dinner party to honor my chosen family. Under fairy lights, we gathered in the garden, telling tales and celebrating fresh starts. There was no guilt, no stress, and no need to tread carefully. It was just what I had always imagined family get-togethers might be. I've reached another professional milestone. After years of working in corporate settings, I started my own consulting firm. I desired the flexibility to choose my own hours and focus on tasks that were important to me. The company has grown more quickly than I anticipated, giving me the flexibility and financial independence I've only ever imagined. For the first time in years, work feels more like a passion than a duty, and my days are suddenly filled with meaning. The fact that I no longer give my biological family any thought, however, shocked me the most. I have not thought about them for months. No longer is there a persistent feeling of shame or concern about what people could be saying about me. I took some time in therapy to consider my progress. My therapist made a comment during one session that really resonated with me. I'm now thriving instead of just surviving. Although it wasn't simple, letting go of my grudges has liberated me in ways I can't even explain. Bits and pieces of information about my brothers have come to me via common contacts. They are both having financial difficulties, and it seems that they have taken their resentment out on my parents by accusing them of not helping them more. Ironically, they were always the ones who were preferred. I didn't feel compelled to intervene or provide assistance when I heard this. I've come to terms with the idea that I have no responsibility for their hardships. I'm thankful for the lesson, even if it took me years to learn. In the meantime, media coverage of my consultancy firm has begun to increase. A recent story on empowering women in the workplace included me. The article emphasized my path and the ways in which I have benefited others from my experiences. Although it felt unreal, the recognition had significance. It serves as a reminder that I can turn even the most difficult aspects of my history into something constructive. My relationship has only gotten stronger on a personal level. My spouse and I have begun making plans for the future and discussing the possibility of having children of our own in the future. We've spoken for a while about the type of parents we want to be and how we're going to avoid the destructive patterns we were exposed to as children. Building a life with someone who respects my limits and shares my beliefs makes me happy. It appears that even my extended family has gotten the message. They've obviously understood that I won't give in to manipulation or guilt after months of quiet. The drama has ceased along with the calls and messages. It's been a blessing that the distance has allowed me to concentrate entirely on the life I've created. Launching a podcast has been one of the most fulfilling things I've done lately. I offer tips and anecdotes about establishing boundaries, flourishing on your own, and overcoming toxic family dynamics in every episode. The reaction has been amazing. People who have listened to the podcast have said how much they can connect to my experiences and how it has benefited them personally. One of the most satisfying aspects of my trip has been realizing that my story may change the lives of others. Once a cause for fear, holidays are now something to look forward to. I established a new custom with my selected family last Christmas. We spent the day playing games and watching movies, cooking a great lunch, and exchanging gifts. It was happy and stress-free, devoid of all the anxiety and guilt I had previously connected with the time of year. In addition to prioritizing my health and fitness, we have already begun preparing for this year, and I am quite enthusiastic about this new chapter in my life. I started doing yoga and meditation, and now I do them every day. Both have assisted me in maintaining my equilibrium and sense of reality, even when things get busy. I've found a peaceful, balanced, and contented version of myself. My father sent me an unexpected email a few weeks ago. It was brief and straightforward. He apologized for how he had previously treated me. It may have been sincere, but I didn't answer. I've realized that apologizing doesn't make up for years of hurt or require me to reopen doors. I've made the conscious decision to shut that chapter of my life, and I'm okay with it. I just posted my last post on Reddit. I expressed my gratitude to the community in it for their steadfast encouragement and support throughout the years. I wrote about how establishing boundaries had transformed my life, and how, without toxic relationships, I had created something lovely. I was reminded of the power that arises from shared experiences by the thoughtful and kind responses. As I sit here thinking about it all, I see how far I've come. My life is filled with serenity, prosperity, and love. I've discovered that happiness may be attained without the approval of others. All you have to do is put yourself first. Ultimately, I've grown into my own golden kid, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Story 4. Your assistance is much appreciated. Together, let's continue to build this channel. Many thanks. Let's begin the video now. Hello, everyone. I'll go right in because I'm not sure how to begin. I've been putting this tale off for a long, and I'm not sure if that's because I've been too busy keeping my life together or because I'm still processing things. In any case, here we are. I am 48 years old, and my wife Donna is 47, a woman. We've been wed for 25 years, almost 25 years actually, whether that is still relevant at all. We have 2 wonderful children, a 20-year-old son serving in the military and a 22-year-old daughter completing college. Despite our imperfections, we managed to make life work. I also believe that we were a team for the majority of those years. However, the past 5 years or so have been difficult. I will not sugarcoat the situation. When her father died, Donna's mother had no one else to care for her once she got dementia in her early 60s. Donna then requested if she could move in with us. I'm not a monster, you see. Although I didn't particularly like the notion, I consented since I understood how essential it was to her. I was not aware at the time of how much it would drain us both. I'm speaking to anyone who has provided care for someone who has dementia. The days turn into a never-ending cycle of assistance, reminders, and cleanup. Imagine being worn out all the time while you watch someone you love deteriorate a bit more each day. Donna was the most affected. She was always anxious, fearing that she would become just as stressed as her mother during COVID. We felt as though we were imprisoned in a stress bubble. There was no getting around it because we both worked from home. Her mother would become irritated about a minor issue and lose it, or she would roam the house and forget where she was. I would sit there and reassure Donna that we were in this together when she would weep at night and occasionally tell me she didn't believe she could do it any longer. We've survived the worst of it, I thought, when her mom eventually went into a memory care facility early this year. The harm has already done, but things will improve now. Donna had changed. She felt bad about placing her mother in a different residence. She confided in me that she thought time was passing her by, as if she didn't have much time before dementia took over. I made an effort to comfort her, but nothing I said ever seemed to resonate. After the children were out of the home and her mother was looking after them, we had always discussed taking a trip. That was the strategy. Together, we would sell the house, resign from our jobs, and embark on a global tour. We had a timeline, too. 2023 summer. We put money aside for it. We spent years discussing it. I vividly recall Donna telling me that one day, it will simply be the wide road, you and me. She described waking up without a plan, sleeping in little bed breakfasts, and traveling through small villages. We would sit and imagine destinations for hours. We would visit the Grand Canyon, Italy, and Greece. Her expression would change as if she could already see it, and I took her word for it. I believed that was something we were both anticipating. I believed that we were still in agreement. Then one day, after returning home from a round of errands, I noticed a note on the kitchen table. At first, I didn't give it much thought. I thought she had given me some mail, but as I opened it, I felt sick to my stomach. I apologize, it said. I must discover who I am. I can't continue to live this way, even though I love you. Please make an effort to comprehend. When I'm ready, I'll return. What it was like to read that is beyond words. As if I couldn't comprehend the words I was seeing, I remained there for a minute, clutching the letter and attempting to digest it. Did she just walk out? No argument, no warning, no fight. Simply gone. I began analyzing things after taking a glance around the place. She was half naked. She missed some of her favorite things. She hadn't actually gone to spend a weekend with a pal. She went out. I attempted to contact her and got her voicemail. I also texted her, inquiring about her whereabouts and general well-being. No answer. My mind flew into overdrive, considering every scenario. Has something taken place? Was she secure? After that, I looked into our financial accounts. I saw it at that moment. She had embezzled the majority of our savings. It was more than simply her cash. Our money was involved. for the vacation we were meant to take together. We had saved money for years. The feelings I had upon seeing that number are beyond words. All of my emotions, shock, rage, betrayal, came at me at once. I was unable to concentrate for the following few days. She seemed to vanish off the face of the planet, despite my repeated attempts to contact her. Then, a week later, my daughter was pacing the kitchen while holding her phone and shaking her head as if she was incredulous at what she was seeing. "She seems content, Dad. What does she look like?" "Joyful." She showed me the photo of Donna smiling with a group of strangers on her phone. Somewhere, Donna was sitting with sunglasses on a beach. I was surrounded by unfamiliar faces, complete strangers. Not a single face I recognized. I recall thinking when I gazed at their phony grins, who are these individuals? Like, with your entire family at home, how can you just show up and join a bunch of strangers? It said in the caption, "To freedom, cheers. Finding contentment and starting over." I'm not sure what freedom she believed she was celebrating, but it was definitely not mine. Is she completely unconcerned about us? My daughter's voice cracked as she asked. I was unsure of how to respond. What should I have said? That the lady who gave her a hug through every heartache, who sat at her soccer matches, and who reared her had just up and gone. "I don't know, kiddo," I murmured, placing a hand on her shoulder. If only I had a response. She didn't weep. "I don't even know who she is anymore," she mumbled instead. After that, she walked back to her room and shut the door. That was the hardest thing to strike me. My kid, who formerly looked up to her mother, treats her as though she's a complete stranger. The money wasn't the only factor. It was the decision she made to go. She didn't simply abandon me. Her family was abandoned by her. On the 25-year life we have created together, the impact this would have on our children didn't even concern her. I was left to pick up the pieces, but she didn't seem to care. I stared at my phone for days, hoping for a call, text, or whatever, but it never came. I began to comprehend something at that point that has been with me ever since. I didn't cause Donna to leave. She departed because she no longer wanted to be in charge. The actual chaos began at that point. The days that followed were chaotic. I discovered she had been preparing this for some time after looking through all of our joint accounts. She must have done a lot of planning for our vacation. She ended up owning that. She spent almost all of the money we had saved together over the years. Our future, poof, lost. I made another attempt to phone her, directly to voicemail. I texted, nothing. She seemed to vanish. At the time, my daughter, who was still in college, also made an effort to get in touch. One text message was returned to her. "I need this, yet I love you," Donna said. "When you're older, you'll comprehend. Tell your brother that I'm all right. You get it? Know what? That my wife simply left her family and life to play freely and unattached." Yes. No. When Donna began posting more on Instagram, things became worse. She wasn't just at any beach. We were expected to spend time together on cruises, go out to clubs, eat at upscale restaurants, and do other activities. She was accompanied in each photo by this bunch of individuals who were obviously irresponsible. How she found them is a mystery to me. Did I never meet them before, or were they some old friends, a group on the internet? I only knew that she appeared to be having a great time. Even bad were the captions. "You only got one life, etc. Don't squander it. Be grateful for friends who encourage you. Raise yourself up." When we were interacting with her mother, where were they? When she cried at night, where were they? Worried that she would get dementia. Those pals must only be enjoyable when you have money to spend and nothing binding you. However, I lost my mind over one post. In fact, she expressed her gratitude to her wonderful spouse for understanding and supporting her during this journey. The want to hurl my phone across the room was strong. I had nothing to support. I had no idea where she was. It seemed as though she was attempting to depict me at home, grinning and waving her away, as though this was all a part of a larger scheme. I was frantically trying to find out how to pay the debts she left me in the interim. The mortgage was due. The utilities were the automobile payments. My wife stole the most of our money, but I didn't care. Although I had always been cautious with money, I never thought I would suddenly have to manage this home alone. A few weeks later, I began to see the wider picture. Donna didn't just discover who she was fleeing the life we had created, the difficult moments, and the obligations. I now know that she had been harboring animosity for years, even though I had assumed we had been on the same page during this whole ordeal. And she ran away rather than speaking to me like a grown-up. My children and I got down to go over everything. I wasn't going to lie for her, but I also didn't want them to hear my resentful side. My kid was furious because he was stationed across the nation. It was in his voice that I heard. In fact, his voice was tight with frustration when he contacted me earlier. "What the devil is happening, Dad?" Mom is acting as like nothing is wrong, and I just received a text from her. She wrote and gave me a photo of a damn sunset. "I hope all is okay with you, miss. Do you miss me? Even so, what does that mean?" He stopped and I could hear him inhale to relax. "Dad, she cannot act as though this is not a serious matter. She can't send me photos of sunsets as if nothing is wrong." "You're correct." "She doesn't," I informed him. "Has she spoken to you then? Given you a valid explanation?" I wanted to say something to calm him down, but I was at a loss for words. "No," I said. She grabbed the money, left a note, and vanished. "Dad, I don't understand. How is that accomplished? How can you simply abandon your family in that manner?" "Son, I'm not sure," I answered, attempting to maintain a steady tone of voice. "I'm not sure." "But what about my daughter?" She was going through her mother's Instagram as if she couldn't believe what she was seeing, and she kept shaking her head. "This isn't normal," she observed to her father. "Mom is behaving like she's 25, rushing about with these individuals." I was thinking the same thing, but I didn't say it aloud. Donna has always had a slight obsession with maintaining her youthful appearance. She looked after herself, worked out, always try to look your best. That's what I used to adore about her. However, it appeared that she now wished to destroy the life that we had spent decades creating. The carelessness of it all. My psyche was bled. This woman had been whining for years that we couldn't do this or that because we had too many obligations, and now she was dismissing it all as if the rest of us were still here and still living in the same world. She chose to give up. I didn't expect her to be a martyr, but I also didn't imagine she would simply desert us. I was having trouble understanding that section. She had always been the planner and the well-organized person. Nevertheless, she didn't hesitate to leave everything behind. But that's what really grabbed me. Every few days she would contact our daughter, saying things like, "I miss you. All I need is time. When I'm ready, I'll return." As if she were going on a spiritual retreat. She wasn't having fun with her new pals in Bali or wherever she had landed up. But what are you ready for? To return home and act as if nothing had occurred. After everything, she genuinely thought she could just stroll back into our life as if we had been waiting for her. The rage began to sink in at that point. I was first too surprised to feel anything other than bewildered. Now, however, I was beginning to recognize Donna's actions now. She wasn't simply disoriented or perplexed. She was acting self-centeredly. It's simple. She was completely mistaken if she believed that I would wait here indefinitely for her to come to her senses. I eventually began to come to terms with the fact that my wife was living it up on social media, like some influencer on a perpetual vacation after observing her for a month. Not only did she leave, but her lack of guilt about it was what truly annoyed me. She would always publish something new, just when I felt she was beyond my ability to be surprised. Leaving is one thing, but projecting an air of freedom is quite another. Simply being true to yourself when your spouse is at home, becoming overwhelmed by expenses. Furthermore, your children are unsure about what to believe. She shared a video about her tale one day. It was a group of her female friends and a few guys. Someone was saying, "Donna, you must stay with us for the New Year's party," in the background. "Oh, I'm not going anywhere," she added. "Now I'm free." Release the word once again, as if she had spent 25 years chained to something rather than married, raising children, and creating a life. It infuriated me. When I vented to a few close friends, they all had the same reaction. "You should consult a lawyer." The problem was that I had previously done it. The week following Donna's departure, I met with my attorney. She informed me that since she hadn't actually abandoned anything but me, there wasn't much I could do legally at this point. I would have to wait for her to return, or at the very least make herself available to receive documents if I desired a divorce. I blocked all of her remaining credit cards in the meanwhile. Made sure her phone was off and frozen anything she might attempt to access. Our family's strategy. I was pretty smart about the phone thing, because she ended up dropping out of the plan entirely when I blocked international calls. Little triumphs, I suppose. My daughter contacted me a few weeks later. After she hung up with Donna, she gave me a call. Her voice was trembling with annoyance. "I just need to get out of here before it's too late," Donna apparently told her. "When you have your own family one day, you'll comprehend." That was the tipping point for me. Bless her. My daughter tried to reason with her. She expressed our collective hurt to Donna, how she couldn't simply flee this life. What was said by Donna? "I have to be self-centered now. When I'm ready, I'll return." Selfish? I'm not joking. I saw her post shortly after we had that conversation. Something about being with her tribe in Bali. Her people? For her group of freeloaders, she had a new term. Right now. She sounded like she had read too many self-help books, I promise. In order to keep the house and cars paid for, I was working long hours and making sure our children didn't go completely crazy. Additionally, she was dancing barefoot with her new tribe at a beach bonfire. No obligations, no guilt. I actually began to wonder at one point if she had planned any of this before she left. Were these people she met online? Were they some sort of group that persuaded her to flee? It seemed to me that she had been getting ready for months as I gave it more thought. The trip must have been planned by her. These must have been the people she was speaking to. Hell, she probably quit her job weeks before I even noticed she was unhappy. But the thing is, whenever I tried asking her for an address to send her legal paperwork, because yes, I was done waiting, she texted back. "We'll talk about it when I'm ready to come back." She actually believed she could just waltz back into our lives, like we'd all been sitting around waiting for her to find herself. I guess that Donna didn't think she'd done anything wrong. In her mind, this was all perfectly justified. She deserved this. And we were supposed to understand. The entitlement was insane. By the end of that month, I'd had enough. The anger was starting to outweigh the confusion. This wasn't some midlife crisis anymore. This was who she was now. And I wasn't about to sit here and play the role of the supportive husband. So the next day, I called my lawyer again. I told her I was ready to file for divorce. She has to find a way. No more waiting. No more hoping. I wanted out. She told me we couldn't officially file yet because Donna was still off-grid, but we could have everything ready to go. The papers were drawn up. Asset division repayment for the money she took. The whole thing. The lawyer explained that since I'd been keeping up with the mortgage and the bills alone, the courts would likely factor that in. The plan was simple. When Donna came back, because eventually she would, she'd get served. No explanations, no apologies, just paperwork. I'll be honest. Deciding to divorce her wasn't simple. You don't spend 25 years with someone and simply let it go overnight. But I wasn't the one who left. I wasn't the one who emptied our cash and uploaded photos with random people in Bali while my family picked up the pieces. Donna made her choice. Now I was cooking, my Thanksgiving was coming up, and I wasn't sure what to do at first. My daughter didn't want to remain home. Too many memories of family dinners with her mom. I didn't blame her. My son couldn't come back from his base, so there was just the two of us. Then out of nowhere, Donna's sister contacted me. She invited us to their place for Thanksgiving. I wasn't sure what to say at first. Wouldn't that be strange? When I showed up, I didn't want everyone to be gazing at me and wondering what Donna was doing. However, what her sister said resonated with me. Her decisions shouldn't prevent you from starting a family. I said, yes. The day before Thanksgiving, we made the drive to Donna's sister's house. Even though I was so anxious, it wasn't weird when we entered. It wasn't strange. My daughter and I were embraced by Donna's relatives, who pretended nothing had changed. I believe they were ashamed of Donna's actions, but nobody brought it up. They only greeted us and made an effort to make the day pleasant. I thought things could become strange when Donna's mother's name was spoken, but her brother put his hand on my shoulder and said, "You did right by her, man." Everyone is aware of that. I didn't feel totally alone for the first time in months. As my daughter and I ate and laughed with everyone at the table, I pondered whether Donna was even aware of what she had thrown away. We were there, but she wasn't. We continued to feel like a family. After we returned home, my daughter shared a simple Thanksgiving photo of her and her aunt and uncle grinning. Nothing spectacular, nothing suspicious. Until Donna texted my daughter 2 days later, I didn't give it any thought. I looked at the photo. I hope both of you are doing well. I'm going to return for Christmas. Then, we'll speak. I didn't have to speak at all. I just saw the text, my daughter remarked. She is quite brave. I shook my head and grinned a bit. Donna was unaware that I would be prepared by Christmas. My lawyer and the paperwork were prepared, and when she returned expecting to speak, she was taken by surprise. I was surprised by how calm the weeks before Christmas were. Donna was not communicating with me. She was also posting less on Instagram. No photos of the beach. Nothing. No group dinners. She seemed to be winding down, but not in a positive manner. I began to wonder what she would do next. Did she believe that this brief reprieve would endure forever? As far as I knew, she was unemployed, homeless, and had spent the most of the money she had stolen. Perhaps she was being caught up by reality. Meanwhile, I was getting ready for her to come back. Together with my attorney, I ensured that the divorce documents were prepared. She clarified that the courts would take it into account because I had been paying the mortgage, bills, and other expenses. We would divide assets according to fairness, rather than what Donna believed she was entitled to, and she would owe me for what she stole. I also ensured that the home was secured. They replaced the locks. They changed the security code. Previously, the emergency key was concealed beneath the flower pot. Lost. I was not going to take any chances. When Donna returned, I had no idea what to anticipate. However, I was aware of one thing. She wasn't returning to my place as though she still lived there. Without placing too much pressure on my kid, I made an effort to keep her informed as much as possible. I didn't want to exacerbate her already existing anger toward her mother. She asked me one evening whether I believed Donna had intended to return for Christmas. "I'll be here," she said. I informed her, "I'm prepared for her. Is she likely to apologize?" I paused to consider that before responding. "I'm not sure, but even if she is, her actions remain unchanged." Donna texted me again a few days before Christmas. Brief and easy. "The 23rd is when I'll be in town. Let's have a conversation." That was it. Don't apologize, no justification. Let's just chat. I spent some time looking at the text, partly expecting to feel anything, perhaps anger, sadness. However, nothing was present. I was, if anything, relieved. I was relieved to have a plan at last, that I was no longer waiting around. I responded with a single text, "All right." In actuality, there was nothing more to discuss. Donna was not yet aware of that, but she would. I was going to give her the divorce papers when she arrived at my house, expecting us to have a lengthy, tearful talk. This year's Christmas was going to be different, but I was prepared. I made sure everything was in order, cleaned the house, and then sat down to wait on the 23rd. Probably for the best, my daughter spent the night at her friend's house. I didn't want her to witness the impending disaster. My heart was racing when the doorbell finally rang, but I maintained a composed expression. Donna was standing there as if nothing had changed when I opened the door. She had a nice appearance. She always did, of course. However, there was a look in her eyes that suggested she might have thought I would be delighted to see her. At first, I remained silent. I simply gazed at her. "Hello?" With a little smile, she said, as if it were another day. I didn't return the smile. I picked up the manila envelope from the table behind me and gave it to her. "What is this?" she inquired. She was losing her grin. "Divorce documents," I said. As if she hadn't heard me correctly, Donna blinked. "What? Why?" "You left," I murmured, staring her in the eyes. "You made a decision. I own this. And that's it." The discussion was over. She was still as she stood. I'm not sure what she was expecting when she arrived, but it was definitely not that. I briefly feared that she might burst into tears, but instead she remarked, "You didn't have to do this," as she glanced at the package in her hands. I about lost it at just one line. "I didn't have to." I said it again. "You went out. You stole our money, fled with unidentified people, and pretended that I didn't mind. Donna, you are the one who accomplished this, not me." She seemed to be about to protest, but she stopped herself. In months, for the first time, I believe she recognized the extent of the situation. She took a little step back, as though she was unsure whether to enter or go. "May I enter?" At last, her voice became softer as she inquired. "No," I replied. I wasn't impolite. I wasn't being emotional or shouting. I had just finished. I've stopped letting her set the rules. I'm done allowing her to come and go from my life as if nothing had occurred. We just stood there for a while. I was at the doorway and she was on the porch. She gazed about as if she were surveying the house, the yard, the residence she had left behind. What was going through her head, I wondered? Did she regret it? Did she feel ashamed? Was she even concerned? "Can we at least have a conversation?" she inquired. "Please." I sighed, not so much indignant as exhausted. "Donna, there's nothing else to say. Everything you need to know is stated in the documents." Without saying another word, she gazed down at the envelope after giving me another long glance. She walked back to her car after turning. I saw her leave in her car. It was silent on Christmas Eve. We spent the evening wrapping a few presents and watching movies once my daughter got home. Donna wasn't mentioned by either her or myself. Both of us were sick of discussing it. My daughter once asked me whether she thought her mother would sign the documents. Sincerely, I answered, "I don't know. But we're still going." Donna had left. Perhaps she had been gone for a long time before she really departed. Perhaps I was too preoccupied with keeping things together to see that the lady I married was already fading away, 1 year at a time. She was not returning anyhow. Not at all, and that was all right. Tidying up loose ends took up the next few weeks. I was informed by my attorney that we may proceed with the divorce, even if Donna didn't want to help. But I didn't think she would resist. She hadn't given much thought to the future since she had been too preoccupied with chasing sunsets and hazy notions of independence. Donna eventually signed the documents around the middle of January. Not a message, no justification. The bottom of the page just has her signature. My lawyer phoned to inform me that it was completed. I was not as relieved as I had hoped. It wasn't a momentous occasion for which I raised my fists in celebration. It was like shutting a door that was too long cracked open. Whatever it is she believes she is after, I hope she finds it. I do. It won't be with me, though. Life feels stable now that a few months have passed. It is quieter in the house, but in a pleasant manner. In the end, I sold it. Reduce your space so it doesn't feel so empty. I resumed my social life, acquired a few pastimes that I had previously neglected throughout the years. My children are also doing well. My son is doing well in the military, and my daughter will soon graduate. All of us have adapted to this new reality, and to be honest, it's better than I anticipated. I have no regrets about the years I spent with Donna. I have no regrets about the sacrifices, the difficult moments, or even the enjoyable ones. I regret believing that I had to keep everything together by myself, that in order to regain my life, I would have to wait for her to decide she was done discovering herself. I didn't. And I'm beginning to realize that at last, I want to share this with everyone who is going through a similar situation and is waiting for someone who has already made up their mind. You are not required to wait. When something is gone, you don't have to keep it. Sometimes the best course of action is to let go, and I did just that for myself. I appreciate you reading all the way through.